Michael sat in the grand, opulent ballroom, surrounded by laughter and chatter. His wealth had earned him many connections, yet he couldn't shake the emptiness gnawing at his heart. The people around him weren't friends, just faces he could call upon when necessary. Even in the midst of all this extravagance, Michael felt alone. The glittering chandeliers above him failed to light the darkness within. He gazed out the window, watching the city lights twinkle below, but the view no longer captivated him. His life, once filled with purpose, seemed to have lost its direction. The foundation he built to give back to the world often felt like a cold, detached duty rather than a passion. Michael sighed deeply, wondering if there was more to life than this constant cycle of business meetings, charity galas, and empty interactions. The event was in full swing when Sarah walked into the room, her presence cutting through the noise like a breath of fresh air. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't here for the fame or the glitz. Dressed modestly, Sarah moved quietly through the crowd, her eyes bright with purpose. She had come to volunteer for Michael's charity, but something about her felt different, almost ethereal. As Michael observed her from across the room, something stirred within him. He was used to people approaching him with ulterior motives, but Sarah felt genuine. Her smile wasn't forced, and her eyes weren't calculating. Michael found himself intrigued by this quiet woman who seemed to carry a warmth the others lacked. She was kind, humble, and yet there was an undeniable strength in the way she moved. Michael finally found an opening. He approached Sarah quietly, unsure of what he expected from this conversation. "I don't believe we've met," he said, his voice smooth and controlled. Sarah turned, her warm eyes meeting his, and for a brief moment, Michael felt like the world around him faded into the background. "Sarah," she replied with a smile. "I'm a volunteer for your foundation." Michael nodded, taking in the simplicity of her introduction. No grand speeches. No small talk. It was refreshing. They spoke briefly about the charity and the upcoming initiatives, but Michael found himself more drawn to the woman herself. There was something in the way she spoke, genuine, thoughtful, and direct. Something in Sarah seemed to cut through the layers of his world, and for once, he found himself wanting to know more. As the conversation lingered, Michael found himself distracted by thoughts of Sarah. There was no doubt in his mind that she was different, but the lingering question gnawed at him: was she truly as she appeared, or was there something he was missing? People often put on masks, especially when wealth was involved. Michael had learned that lesson the hard way. Yet, he couldn't deny the pull he felt. He watched Sarah as she worked with other volunteers, offering advice, sharing ideas, and laughing with them in a way that felt unpretentious. It was clear she wasn't interested in impressing anyone. She was focused on the work, genuinely passionate about making a difference. For the first time in a long while, Michael felt like someone saw him as more than just a billionaire. But was that real? Or was she simply good at what she did? The annual charity gala was approaching, and Michael was preparing for yet another night filled with handshakes and polished smiles. As usual, he would attend as the host, but it was always the same, people attending for the wrong reasons. He found himself wishing for something different, something more meaningful. It was at that moment that he remembered Sarah. A part of him wondered if she would be at the gala. After all, she had shown such dedication to the foundation. But would it be the same? Could she remain as genuine in this setting, surrounded by the glitter and glamour of the wealthy elite? Michael wasn't sure, but he couldn't ignore the spark of curiosity that burned within him. The night of the gala arrived, and Michael stepped into the extravagant ballroom, already overwhelmed by the noise and the endless sea of expensive suits. His eyes scanned the room, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He found himself unconsciously searching for Sarah, hoping she would somehow show up. When their eyes finally met across the room, Michael was taken aback. There she was, standing in the corner, wearing a simple yet elegant dress that highlighted her natural beauty. She looked slightly out of place, but in a way that made her stand out even more. Her smile, though modest, radiated warmth. It was the same Sarah he had met at the event, calm, centered, unaffected by the superficiality around her. As the night wore on, Michael found himself gravitating towards Sarah. She was in deep conversation with a few of the volunteers, her laughter echoing softly across the room. But there was something else in her eyes, a depth that spoke of experiences Michael couldn't quite place. He didn't want to pry, but he couldn't help it. There was a vulnerability to her that seemed almost familiar. Michael watched her for a moment, wondering what her life had been like. What had led her to this place? Her easygoing nature was a stark contrast to his own guarded world. She had nothing to hide, it seemed, and that was what made him want to know more. But was it a true vulnerability? Or was it something she had learned to shield over time? By the end of the evening, Michael found himself lost in thought. He had spoken to Sarah more than he ever anticipated, and each conversation left him feeling more intrigued. They shared a quiet moment under the stars on the balcony, away from the chaos inside. There, amidst the quiet hum of the city, Michael couldn't help but wonder if Sarah was simply a figment of his imagination, a hope he clung to in his loneliness. Her presence felt like a reminder that there was more to life than power and wealth, but could it be more than just a fleeting connection? Sarah hadn't made any overt attempts to get closer, but the subtle way she spoke to him, as though he wasn't defined by his money or status, made Michael question everything he thought he knew about relationships. The days that followed were filled with distractions. Michael found himself thinking of Sarah more than he cared to admit. Was it just her charm? Or was there something deeper at play? Sarah had shown no interest in his wealth, no desire to impress him with flattery or grand gestures. She was kind, thoughtful, and yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, something he couldn't place. When he caught wind of some rumors at the foundation about Sarah's personal life, Michael couldn't help but feel a twinge of doubt. Could she have an agenda? Was she really as genuine as she appeared, or was she playing a long game? Michael had been burned before, and the idea of trusting someone again, especially after all that had happened, seemed almost impossible. As the weeks passed, Michael couldn't escape the internal battle that raged inside him. On one hand, he found himself drawn to Sarah's sincerity, but on the other, he struggled with the fear of being deceived again. Every time they spoke, she seemed more and more like someone he could truly connect with. But was that just wishful thinking? The deeper Michael delved into his own thoughts, the more uncertain he became. Was he simply lonely, seeking solace in the first person who showed him kindness? Or was there something about Sarah that made her worthy of his trust? The stakes felt high, and the questions remained unanswered, leaving Michael caught in a whirlwind of doubt. Just as Michael had begun to make sense of his feelings, an unexpected event threw everything into chaos. A financial scandal erupted involving one of the key investors in Michael's charity, and suddenly the foundation was under scrutiny. Sarah, as a volunteer, was caught in the fallout. Michael tried to reassure her, but the pressure of the situation caused a rift between them. For the first time, Michael saw Sarah not as a perfect image of kindness but as someone struggling with the complexities of the world around her. She seemed vulnerable in a way he hadn't expected, uncertain and questioning, just like him. This moment made Michael realize that she wasn't perfect, nor was he. They were both just trying to navigate the world, each with their own struggles. The scandal had shaken Sarah, but it also brought her closer to Michael in a way he hadn't anticipated. They began to share more of their personal struggles, opening up to each other in ways they never had before. Michael found himself seeing Sarah not as an idealized figure, but as a real person with her own flaws and fears. He admired her resilience, her willingness to confront challenges head-on despite her vulnerabilities. And in those moments of shared vulnerability, Michael began to realize that the connection between them wasn't about perfection, it was about the willingness to be raw, to be open, and to face the world together. As the days turned into weeks, Michael and Sarah's bond deepened. They continued to work together on various projects for the foundation, but there was something more now. They were no longer just colleagues or acquaintances, they had become friends, confidants. Their conversations became more frequent, their time spent together more natural. Michael found himself looking forward to the moments they shared. Despite the pressures they both faced, they found solace in one another's company. Sarah, in particular, had a way of grounding Michael, helping him see the world in a different light. He wasn't just the billionaire philanthropist anymore, he was Michael, a man trying to navigate the complexities of life, just like everyone else. One quiet evening, as they sat together in the charity's office, Michael realized just how far they had come. The woman he had once doubted, questioning her motives and her sincerity, had become someone he trusted deeply. Sarah had proven herself to be more than just a volunteer, she was a constant source of support, understanding, and honesty in his life. Michael realized that he had been wrong to assume she had an agenda. She had never asked for anything from him, and she had never expected anything in return. She had simply been herself, and in doing so, she had unknowingly pulled Michael out of the loneliness he had felt for so long. As the months passed, Michael's feelings for Sarah continued to grow. He realized that the connection they shared was unlike anything he had ever experienced before. But as much as he wanted to embrace it, he found himself torn. Could he really open his heart to someone like Sarah? Or would he, once again, be left disappointed? The doubts lingered, but Michael knew that something had changed in him. He was no longer the same man who had once looked at life through the lens of wealth and power. Sarah had taught him that there was more to life than money, it was about connection, vulnerability, and trust. As the foundation faced increasing public scrutiny, Michael found himself relying more and more on Sarah. She had become his confidant, the person he turned to when things seemed impossible. Yet, despite their deepening bond, there was an undercurrent of tension that neither of them acknowledged. It wasn't just the pressure of their work. It was the unspoken feelings between them, growing stronger with each passing day. Sarah, too, seemed conflicted. While she had never shown any interest in Michael's wealth or status, there was something more, something that made her hesitant to fully embrace the connection between them. She didn't want to become another person who saw Michael as a means to an end, but she couldn't deny the growing attraction she felt. The line between friendship and something more was becoming harder to ignore. One afternoon, while they were reviewing some new proposals for the foundation's initiatives, Sarah caught Michael's gaze. There was something in the air, something that felt different. The usual easy conversation between them had shifted. Michael opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Was it the right time to confess his feelings? Could he trust her with his heart? Before he could say anything, Sarah spoke first, her voice soft but steady. Michael, I don't know what this is between us. But I feel something, too. Her words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, neither moved. Michael's heart raced, the tension finally spilling over. He knew, in that moment, that they were standing at a crossroads. As the days passed after their conversation, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he had revealed too much. He had opened himself up in a way he hadn't done in years, and now, he was left wondering if it had been a mistake. His mind raced with doubts. Was Sarah just being kind? Did she feel obligated to say something in return? He couldn't help but worry that his confession had scared her away. Sarah, on the other hand, was wrestling with her own doubts. She hadn't expected the conversation to take that turn, and now she found herself questioning her own feelings. She cared for Michael, more than she'd care to admit, but was it just the circumstances of their close work that had created these emotions? Was she in love with him, or was it simply the connection they had built in their shared mission? The fear of not being enough haunted her thoughts. The tension between Michael and Sarah continued to build. They both retreated into themselves, unsure of how to proceed. At work, they maintained professionalism, but the warmth they had shared was no longer there. Their conversations became stilted, the unspoken words between them creating an invisible barrier. Michael missed the ease with which they had once spoken, and Sarah longed for the closeness they had before the tension crept in. It wasn't just about the foundation anymore, their personal feelings had become too complicated to ignore. Both of them struggled with the desire to reach out, but neither seemed willing to take the next step. The wall between them grew taller each day, and neither of them knew how to break it down. A crisis at the foundation gave them both an unexpected opportunity to reconnect. An important donor had pulled their support, leaving the foundation in jeopardy of losing several key projects. Michael was devastated by the news, feeling like all of his efforts were crumbling before him. He was prepared to fight tooth and nail to keep everything afloat, but this time, he wasn't alone. Sarah stepped forward, offering a solution that Michael hadn't considered. She suggested a new way to approach their current investors, one that would refocus on the emotional impact of the work the foundation was doing, rather than just the financial aspect. Michael, impressed by her insight, agreed to follow her lead. As they worked together to draft a new proposal, Michael couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. As the days passed, something began to shift between Michael and Sarah. They found themselves working together more closely than ever before, their shared mission providing a bridge between the personal and the professional. Slowly, the wall that had grown between them began to crumble, replaced by a renewed sense of trust and understanding. Sarah no longer seemed like a distant figure in his life. She was the one person who truly understood him, who could see past the surface to the person he was beneath it all. Michael, for the first time in a long while, felt like he had someone who cared for him, not for his wealth, not for his status, but for who he was as a person. And that realization began to change everything. One evening, after an exhausting day at the foundation, Michael and Sarah found themselves alone in the office. The work was finished, and the city outside was quiet. Michael sat at his desk, staring at the paperwork in front of him, but his mind wasn't on the documents. It was on Sarah. He turned to her, his voice low but firm. "Sarah, I can't keep pretending that I don't feel this way anymore. I care about you, more than I thought possible. And I need to know if you feel the same." Sarah looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time in their relationship, the vulnerability between them wasn't something to fear, it was something to embrace. She took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do, Michael. I care about you, too. I think I always have." With their feelings finally out in the open, Michael and Sarah both knew that their relationship would never be the same. It was no longer just about the foundation, or the work they had done together, it was about them, and the risk they were willing to take on each other. They had both been burned before, had both faced betrayal and loss, and now they were taking the ultimate leap of faith. But as they moved forward, they knew there were still obstacles to face. The foundation, with all its challenges, was far from over, and they would need to navigate their growing relationship within that context. Could they keep their personal lives separate from their professional ones? Or would their love for each other ultimately change the course of everything they had worked for? As Michael and Sarah's relationship grew stronger, they began to face new challenges. Sarah, once a volunteer, now had more influence within the foundation. Michael, though supportive, couldn't help but feel a twinge of discomfort. The power dynamics were shifting, and for the first time, he realized how much he relied on Sarah's judgment and insight. But with this shift came a new kind of temptation, one that he wasn't sure he could handle. Could he trust himself to maintain his role as the leader of the foundation, or would his feelings for Sarah cloud his judgment? As they worked together, Michael found himself constantly questioning whether their newfound closeness would be an asset or a hindrance in their mission. Just as things seemed to be falling into place, a major setback rocked the foundation. A new competitor had emerged, one with greater resources and a more aggressive approach to philanthropy. Michael felt the pressure mounting once again, and for the first time, he doubted whether he could keep the foundation afloat. Sarah, seeing the stress Michael was under, offered her support in ways he hadn't anticipated. She stepped forward with a plan to compete head-to-head with their new rival, using her knowledge of the community to turn the tide in their favor. Her confidence and determination reminded Michael why he had come to trust her in the first place. But even as Sarah's strength gave him hope, Michael couldn't shake the fear that it might all unravel if they didn't act quickly enough. The foundation's future hung in the balance as Michael and Sarah worked tirelessly to confront their new competitor. With each passing day, they grew closer, their professional relationship becoming deeply intertwined with their personal one. The pressure was mounting, but Michael found solace in Sarah's unwavering support. Then, at a critical meeting, Sarah presented an idea that would not only protect the foundation but also take it to new heights. Michael, seeing her brilliance and dedication, knew that together they could face anything. But even as they celebrated this breakthrough, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that their relationship was being tested in ways they hadn't anticipated. Could they truly navigate both love and work, or would the lines blur too much? As the foundation continued to grow and thrive, so did Michael and Sarah's love. But with it came a burden they hadn't expected. The more they became involved with each other, the more their personal lives began to merge with their professional ones. It became harder to tell where one ended and the other began. Michael found himself torn between the love he felt for Sarah and the responsibilities he had as the leader of the foundation. Would he be able to separate the two, or would the weight of their growing relationship eventually crush them both? He knew that if they were to move forward, they would need to find a way to balance it all, or risk losing everything. Trust was the foundation of everything they had built, both professionally and personally. But as challenges mounted, Michael began to question whether they could continue without it being tested. The pressure of running the foundation together was starting to strain their relationship, and he feared that their bond might break under the weight. Sarah, too, was struggling. She had never imagined that being in a relationship with Michael would come with such complexity. The love they shared was undeniable, but so was the challenge of maintaining their professional integrity while navigating their personal feelings. Could they both stay true to their values, or would the temptation of success overshadow their connection? The stress of balancing love and work reached its breaking point. Michael and Sarah found themselves at odds over a critical decision regarding the future of the foundation. Their disagreements, once small, began to fester, causing cracks to appear in their relationship. It was clear they had reached a crossroads, but neither knew how to move forward. As the tension between them grew, they both wondered if love could truly survive in such a high-pressure environment. Was it worth the sacrifice, or was the risk too great? They both needed space to reflect, to figure out if they could rebuild what they had, or if it was time to walk away from everything they had fought for. In the end, the choice was theirs. Michael and Sarah sat together, facing the future, uncertain but hopeful. Their journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also brought them closer to understanding themselves and each other. The path ahead was unclear, but they knew that whatever happened, they had given their all. And as they looked toward the horizon, they realized that no matter the outcome, the love they had shared was worth every moment of uncertainty. The future was theirs to create, together, if they were willing to take the leap. This story teaches the importance of trust, vulnerability, and mutual support in building meaningful connections. It shows that balancing love and ambition requires self-awareness and the willingness to take risks. Overcoming challenges together leads to personal growth and strengthens relationships. Fear of past experiences can cloud judgment, but embracing vulnerability can bring deeper bonds. Ultimately, love and professional success can thrive when grounded in honesty and understanding. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment below to let me know what you think, and share it with your friends who love a good tale. Subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories like this one. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for your support, and stay tuned for more.